complaints, but overall, I'm happy with it. Didn't pick up really any of the other games I was looking forward to um, this season, if you will. And the elephant in the room, uh, Wheel of Time show. So I'm just gonna say how I feel about it, but then I'm gonna give it its fair bit, right? Like I'm gonna give you my knee-jerk reaction to the full thing, and then I'm gonna be fair and be considerate, which is I don't like it. It sucks. But I understand there's a lot of work, and sometimes it's hard to see the totality of what you're working on when you've got so many aspects to make sure, like a showrunner or a director and stuff has so many moving parts that sometimes you lose focus, you lose passion for putting out something that makes a difference. I mean, hell, Marvel does a good job most of the time, but every so often they miss, or only half of their movies. Also, Spider-Man: No Way Home. Oh, it's everything. I mean, obviously, you can always find complaints. You can always find something that you felt like they should have done. But Spider-Man: No Way Home, I was so happy. I've seen it twice in theaters, and I really want to go see it a third time, but I don't have the money. The first time I went, somebody paid for my ticket. The second time I went, I paid for my ticket. So I've only paid for it once, but I've seen it twice. But if you're a fan of the Marvel films, if you're a fan of Spider-Man, if you're a fan of a fun escape from reality, you should go and see it. It's so now back to the Wheel of Time disappointment. I am on my third read through of the books. And the only reason I continued because I had started doing the third read through before the show came out, and I kind of stopped once the first episode came out. Well, kind of. I'd actually started reading other books that people had suggested to me. But the only reason I continued my read through was I was so disappointed that I needed to get the source material to wash the bad taste out of my mouth. I know I still haven't gotten to the consideration part. There are some things they did really good. Excluding the Aes Sedai, the wardrobes were fantastic. Trollocs were fantastic. The visual choices for Tarvalin and Shadar Logoth and Emmonsfield and the Two Rivers, all really good. They really pinned down the visual stuff. I didn't care much for the channeling, but like I don't fucking care about that. That's not an important thing. I mean, it is important, but the particular direction they took with it didn't bastardize anything. Matter of fact, the inside the ways doesn't look anything like the books, but I'm okay with it. I actually really like the way the ways look. Like, that is fine. My issue with the ways is needing to channel to open them, because that just throws a wrench into so many plots down the road. You know what I mean? The stuff with the Eye of the World, what the fuck? Like, honestly, I really like the way they showed Baal-Zaman and kind of a representation of him and how they pulled like all the stuff to deal with Baal-Zaman and dealing with the Dragon Reborn, right? With the one flashback sequence and all that stuff, right? How they pulled from later points in the book and other themes that come up down the road, with fighting the Shadow and all that stuff, and fighting for dealing with Forsaken and the Dark One and all that, and how they took that inspiration and took other stuff you learn about Luz Theron and what's happened with him and why he ended up failing when fighting the Dark One, right? Like, all of that, I actually really love that. Hated the Eye of the World. I hated the way they did the seal in the Dark One's prison. I mean, I'll put it this way. I didn't hate that specifically, but if that had just been a focus, like these are temples that are spread throughout the world, and these are focuses for the seal. Cool. Just scale up the way they do the seals in the book. That's fine. I'm okay with that. A little strange, makes some of the plot points a little weird, but I'm okay with that. Plenty of in-universe things from the books could sort of substitute that, right? Because all that really matters when it comes to the seals is that there are 7 of them, and that they are lost, right? They are lost, and no one knows where they are. And there's plenty of stuff that's gotten lost over the last 3,000 years since the breaking of the world. Tons of things, right? So absolutely, you could have them be these temples of focal points for sealing the Dark One. Cool. All right, fine with that. I was kind of disappointed that they didn't have anything to do with Agenor or any of the, or Bathamel or any of that, right? Like, sure, you got to cut Forsaken, that's fine. But I was hoping they would do a little bit more. The thing with Pot on Fane having almost no relevance kind of sucked. I was fine with the horn being at Faldara. That's fine. Oh, I guess people don't know about that. Just I'll leave it that vague and blank as much as possible. Sorry if I did spoil anything. But the stuff at Faldara and all that, that's fine. I did not like Matt abandoning his friends. Even fucking corrupt Matt. First off, he was supposedly healed of the corruption, which kind of is fine and kind of isn't. My issue is that she says basically she severed him from the dagger. Moraine is exceptionally good at healing for being Blue Aja and being one woman. But is stated many times, she only removes the corruption that was there. She doesn't actually heal him. She doesn't sever the link to the dagger. He still needed that dagger. Like, even if she had like brought in some like if it was just her and Siwan, or Swan, however you want to say it, it was just those two, that would still be more linked. That would still be more appropriate than having Moraine do it herself. Lan was pretty great, except for that one episode that a lot of people complain about. And I'm not saying Lan isn't allowed to have emotions, but you know what? It would have been so much more impactful. Establish a little bit more that Moraine and Lan can feel each other's emotions, and have like Lan at the funeral, like, have his hand on his buddy, and like just like super extra dead face emotion with like one tear like starting to well at the corner of his eyes, and you see Rosamund Pike's character Moraine off in the corner hiding, right? Just start bawling her eyes out, just like full-fledged as she's looking at Lan, right? Like, just show how much Lan is hurting, but how much he's just cramming all those emotions down. Because I'm not saying Lan is an emotional, because that's some arguments people have made, people claiming that, book purists are ruining this whole thing or whatever else. I'm fine, all right, but that's not what I'm saying, is that he's got no emotions or blah, blah, blah. And of course you'd have emotions if you're, a good friend of yours for 15 years died, of course. But Lan doesn't let those things out. It's a huge part of his character that his love interest in the books helps him become a more full person, and his relationship to Rand and Perrin and Matt, like, they make him more human. They bring out who he is, because Moraine has been so focused on her mission, and Lan has been so focused on his mission, that they've only ever helped each other sort of shove their emotions away. That's also a huge reason. Like, I fucking loved when Moraine and Lan are in the tub in Emmons Field at the wine spring. Shows the very beautiful scene to show the intimacy between a warder and Aes Sedai without it being like, without it having to be sexual. You know what I mean? Just like how they're so comfortable around each other, how it means nothing to them, and they're having a little witty banter. That was a beautiful fucking scene. Again, no issue with it. I didn't really have an issue with them, hauling off Nynaeve. I thought it was stupid, but Nynaeve with the Trollocs, fine. I'm okay with adapting the source material, but make sure you're actually using the source material. Something that cheapens Maureen's character in the TV show. Sorry, this turned from a video journal into a fucking rant about Wheel of Time. It cheapens Swan's character and it cheapens Maureen's character to have them be lovers, and it's fine. I don't give a shit. There's tons. It's nothing to do with the lesbians or gays or anything like that. There's tons of that in the book. Tons of that in the book, and I actually think it's really fucking cool, especially super progressive of Robert Jordan when he started making the book in the fucking 90s, early 90s, literally 90s, uh and that's not the issue. The issue is that their Blue Aja are so idealistic and so driven by purpose and what they think their purpose is in the world, that to have them in a relationship almost feels like one of them is doing it because the other one believes in it. And for me, it felt more like Siwan is supporting Moraine only because they're lovers. That's how it felt. And it cheapens both characters extremely. And it's fucking sad that a friendship cannot be strong enough without there being some sexual tension. I guess you could establish that, like really clearly that there's no weird love triangle by making Moraine have a love interest in Siwan, right? But you could have also, my boy Tom, just they sort of gave him that world traveled wisdom, but they made him more of an asshole than, I know we only know him for like maybe 30 minutes tops, which is tragic, but they could have had him more in the show and had him have this playful thing with Moraine, and Lan being like, establish more of that potential relationship. I guess spoilers. There's a thing between Moraine and Tom. I'll just say that without giving any more context of whether it works out or doesn't or anything like that. But you could have used that as an opportunity to have that severance. And I don't care. Have it be with Alana or whatever else. But it just cheapens their relationship. You could, because I know it's, I worry that when you heard me talk about the Tom and Moraine thing, that it's like, get away from the whole girl on girl. No. I don't give a shit. I really don't. I really fucking don't give a shit. All right. But it's the fact of those two specifically. That's my issue. Have it be with Moraine and Alana, or Moraine and literally any other Aes Sedai. Hell, have it just be a fucking innkeeper. I don't care. Like, just not those two. I'm just saying you could use the opera if you're looking to separate Lan and Moraine, so it's not doesn't seem like some weird love triangle between Lan and his interest in the show, which is accurate, but that's not the point. Actually, I really appreciated that. It felt like all the missing pieces from Eye of the World book sort of were helped mold with looks and sort of witticisms between each other. That's not my point. My point is that if you wanted to use a relationship, someone having a relationship with Moraine to sever the weird love triangle, which honestly, you better get used to the weird love triangles if you're going to go anywhere near book accurate continuing on for the TV show. But anyway, I'm just saying you could use Tom. You could use literally anybody else. And using Tom would just help establish the stuff that does happen later. You know what I mean? Like, make it less... Because, the stuff that does happen later feels a little bit out of the blue, but not quite. Like, it feels like I didn't really see that, but, it doesn't feel wrong, but it doesn't add up to me. Like, at least on my first read through, it felt like that. But just also the whole there's a bunch of small shit that people are like, oh, I love it, or what does it matter? It matters. Like, it really fucking matters. Like, well, it depends on what story they're going to tell, but just trying to logically piece things together, I don't understand why the shawl is a much larger representation of an Aes Sedai and her Aja and her commitment to the world and her being a servant of all than the ring is. Why have the ring colored? It actually diminishes it, because the ring is means you are connected and an initiate of the tower. You know what I mean? Like, accepted get the ring. Aes Sedai get the shawl. Like, the shawl is much more a representation of it, right? And I kind of get trying to establish these pools, these islands, these isolationisms of the Ajas, but having everybody color coded and their rings color coded kind of defeats the purpose of the whole tower breaking. Well, tower breaking, you know, like the subterfuge and the espionage that ends up happening within the tower ends up, well, I worry that it'll end up feeling cheaper and less significant, because you've already established these huge rifts between the Ajas that are only supposed to be very subtle and very, very hidden. You know what I mean? And, well, I guess, why am I? I suppose I'm talking at you like you're really standing here. I just haven't had anybody to talk to about it. Somebody doesn't. I don't have anybody who knows the books as well as I do in my life. My dad did, but, you know, he's dead, so oh well. But seriously, there's the biggest problems I have. Aja's being color coded down to their fucking boots. I mean, maybe not. I've only watched the show once, but that's how it felt. That ruins sort of that whole plot line to deal with the White Tower. Moraine and Siwan being hooked up. That sort of cheapens their quest. It almost makes it feel like either one's pushing the other, or they're both sort of pushing each other. And I don't mean in a good way. I mean like they're both twisted up in the belief that the other one cares more about it than they do. It muddles it for me. Waygate's needing channeling to use. That ruins a whole lot of stuff to do with Perrin later on. Matt abandoning his friends, totally not in Matt's character, especially if he's been severed from the dagger. Like, doesn't make sense. Moraine being shielded or stilled, I know it's probably shielding. But let's just, for the sake of argument, let's call it stilling. I mean, I could see them using that as a way to figure out how to do certain things that happen in, was it book 5 or book 6, but doing that earlier. You know, the stuff that happens in Saladar with how do I put this without spoiling anything? The stuff that happens in Saladar with an accepted that is connected to Thalaine. Is her name Thalaine? I don't remember. But still, those who know what I'm talking about, how is that gonna fucking work? You know what I mean? Like rolling that into Moraine. If she's still, you could do that whole thing with her instead of with the person who gets stilled in the books, right? Okay, if she's shielded, then you could go into the fact that she needs to find Rand. I'm assuming that you've either mostly finished the show or whatever else, but she has to go find Rand so that, because it was Sidene that shielded her, now she's got to find someone who can help her be unshielded, since it's Sidene and not Sidar. Which, also another thing, I'm fine with the channeling, but there's nothing to let the audience know that men can't see women and women can't see men channeling. And also that non-channelers can't see channelers channeling. Like, beyond the fact that some people are just kind of muted to it, like they're not reacting in a way that there's a giant swirl of light, there is no context to whether or not they know, can or cannot see someone channeling. There's no context of that division of men and women channeling beyond the taint showing up on Sidene. But there's nothing. It's just that message is really muddy. And I personally don't know, with everything else I've done, I don't know if they're implying that people can or can't, like women can see Sidene being woven or vice versa. Like, I don't know, with because of the decisions they made, if that's another decision they made, that they can both see each other channel, or no one can see anybody channel, or what it is. I don't know. It's just so muddy. Oh God. And then Loyal, they nerfed Loyal. Like, he just feels so, I mean, I did kind of like him in the ways when he was all like, Tal'Virin, and I was just like, because I was like, fucking, I just heard Matt, like book Matt being like, I'm no bloody Tal'Virin. I'll not be hearing that. on my current third read through, I am like chapter 3 or chapter 4 in book 4, The Shadow Rising, on my third read through, and just like Matt being Matt is just, you know what I mean? There was the bubble of evil that happened. That's what just most recently happened, and the repercussions from that, but not the next thing that happens, the next big thing that happens after the bubble of evil. But Matt would never abandon his friends. He would act like he would. He would be angry, and he would kick and pout and throw his feet and kick dirt and all that stuff. But he would never, even, especially him being cleansed of the evil from the dagger, and in the show being severed from the dagger, especially, he would never abandon his friends. Ever, ever, ever. That is just not who Matt is. Up until that point, Matt was perfect, especially with all the taint stuff. My brother, who was asking me, my brother only read to book 9. He never really, he never picked it up again. So it's not like he has any fresh memories. And he stopped reading it in like high school or college or something like that. And he's older than I am. So he's the oldest of my siblings. Well, not the oldest of my siblings. The oldest of us boy siblings. And he was all like, was Matt like, Matt's like an asshole? I'm like, no, that is like perfect for his corruption by the dagger in Wheel of Time. Like, spot on. Great job. Rand's a fucking great ass job. Like, pretty much writing wise the whole time. That's pretty good. That's pretty good representation of Rand. Well, I can't say a little whiny, but a little bit weird, his actions at the end of the series, but not out of the realm of who Rand is as a character. They didn't write Rand wrong at all. Egwene, they made her like book 7 Egwene, and not like book 1 through 4 Egwene. They made Egwene feel way too far along, maturity wise. Well, it's like they kind of took book 3 Egwene and then like book 6 or 7 Egwene and kind of made that into what took that Egwene and put her in book 1. And it's just without the knowledge that she has at that point, obviously, but it just feels so wrong. And Nynaeve was too placid, but my brother said, I said, Nynaeve not book accurate. And my brother looks at me and goes, the one that's read only up to book 9, he goes, if they put book accurate Nynaeve in the show. I said no one would like her. And he goes, no one would like her. See, I hated Nynaeve up until like book 6. On my first go through. But the second go through, Nynaeve is such a beautifully complex character, and she's such a good person. I just couldn't see it with how much of a, well, I won't say the word, but how much of an outwardly expressive person she is. It's all just, it's all just a tough exterior kind of thing. And I guess they kind of showed that a little bit, but she was way too soft in the TV show. Oh my God. And not enough braid tugging and pulling. Admittedly, actually, on my third read through, I've been trying to pay attention to the braid tugs. They don't really start coming in till book 3. Like, she didn't tug her braid much in 1 and 2. She made a lot of scoffs, huffs, and fiddling with her skirts, but not a whole lot of braid tugging in the first 2 books. Not a whole lot in book 3 either. Book 4, they're far more common, but of course, there's a lot more stress in book 4. And yeah, Tom not being there, that's sad. Loyal, I get wanting to try and do practical, but it's kind of a disappointment. I would have preferred if they had done like forced perspective stuff, or even just like comped him in. I mean, I don't like the design, but even if they had made the design and just made him bigger, or given him slightly more like exaggerated features, like taking the practical and use that as a stepping stone to do very minor alterations, like maybe skin tone alterations, whatever. And I don't mean about him being black, or I don't actually give a shit about that either. Like, that was a huge complaint by a lot of people, was like, there's too much diversity. And I would say there's too much diversity, but not in the same way that a lot of people are saying it. All that really matters to me when it comes to the lack of diversity is that you make each culture and each country very clearly divided. Big cities, Camelin, Tarvalin, all that stuff. Honestly, Faldara with the Shinarans. Great job. I always pictured them a little bit more Mongolian, but it doesn't fucking matter. Honestly, as long as all the Borderlanders are some iteration of each other's ethnicity, I don't care. In the book, it's implied that they're all vaguely Asian continental, right? But it doesn't matter. You could have made all the fucking Borderlanders white, or I don't know, Latin descent. I don't care. Like, as long as you have clearly defined cultures and peoples and faces that goes along with it, right? Make all Andorans black. I really don't give a shit, but just have them consistent. And it's fine. Like, Two Rivers, besides Matt, I had no issue with any of the, okay, Matt, Senbui was too white if you're going to go with that sort of, mixed ethnicity that they were kind of going for. Egwene looked a little too Eastern compared to everybody else. I just wish they would have been a little bit more consistent with that. But of course, if you show Gil'Danan didn't really look all that Eastern, but that could make sense because Gil'Danan is just on the other, southwest of the mountains of Mist. So, I mean, there is that because of Manetheren being, Eastern Gil'Danan, Eastern Almeth, Western Andor, Northern, Western Mirandy, Northern Altara, you get my point. Like, that, Emma's Field, honestly, I don't have a huge issue with. I wish they wouldn't have made Matt so white. I wish they would have made him actually look a little bit more related to the people in town. And I get that's why they made Senbui and stuff like that, but then they should have shown more white characters than what they showed. If they're going to go with Emma's Field being a very biodiverse thing to keep the question of who's the Dragon Reborn and who isn't the Dragon Reborn, fine. I get that. That's fine. Whatever. Cool. But just establish it then. Because you went with all these very dark tones, which absolutely I don't give a shit. Daniel Green makes a very good point in one of his videos before the show ever came out, that in the books, and I was paying attention for it when I was going back through the books, in Barillon, in Whitebridge, in Camelin, it talks about people being darker and being lighter than Egwene. I don't think it talks about in retrospect to anybody else's skin tone, besides maybe Rand, but Rand is kind of the, you know, the outlier here with his particular lineage. But yeah, I mean, I get wanting to, because, you know, Matt would be the other person that would, you know, be the best tenant. But if you said that he could be reborn to any 5, you know, regardless of gender, if the Dragon Reborn could be, you know, born into any gender or even have his soul split, then it wouldn't have mattered. You should have just kept consistency, right? Like the stuff I saw with the very little we saw with Tyr, with Siwan and her father. Great, awesome, cool. I don't care what they chose, but the fact is they were consistent. That kind of Polynesian look. Well, I don't know if it's Polynesian, but you know what I mean, Pacific Islander, Polynesian, whatever it is. Cool. I mean, it's great that they kept a dark tone since they live near the equator and all that stuff. Cool. But the fact is that there's a consistency there, and you can see the cultural differences, especially with the tattoos. Awesome. The fucking Shinarans, awesome. Tar-Valon doesn't fucking matter, because Tar-Valon's like a center point for the fucking world, right? It's like going to LA or going to you know, New York or Washington DC, you know, like any of those places. It's just there's so many groups of people going and coming from there. It doesn't matter. And I know I only listed American places, but I'm American and my scope on the world is very narrow, and I don't want to say anything stupid about things I don't understand. So I'm going to speak from a point of understanding and reference. Anyway, not the point. That's fine. Huge issue, though. Loyal being chased in Tar-Valon. That was my biggest issue with Tar-Valon and Camelin being switched from the books. In this series of events, Tar-Valon citizens would never chase Ogier. They know what a fucking Ogier is. They would not chase him. Not at all. Aes Sedai also wouldn't let it happen. And also, there would be an Aes Sedai, like, coming to visit fucking Loyal, especially in Tar-Valon, because I think the closest, what is it? Is it Sofu? No, it's not Sofu. It's the one that's over towards the Sand Hills, and I don't mean the abandoned steading. I mean the actual steading. Like, there's one nearer Camelin than it is to Tar-Valon. I think the closest one to Tar-Valon is it? It's not Shangtai. I think it is Sofu up in Shinar. I think. Is Sofu up in Shinar? Or is it in northern Camelin? Kyrian. Not the point. Point is that there's no steading like right near Tar-Valon. I mean, I know they have Ogiers go and, you know, maintain stonework and stuff like that. But if there was Ogier in Tar-Valon, they would be treated with respect and probably have Aes Sedai coming visiting them. But that was my only real issue with them switching Tar-Valon and Camelin. I would have liked to see Camelin. I would have liked to have the Elaine, you know, storyline. I didn't have a huge issue with them putting Min in Faldara. A little weird, a little strange, a little forced. I think it would have been better to just have her be like in passing, like kind of how it was in Barillon. And then because I mean, I don't know. I guess it gave them more time to establish Egwene and Nynaeve getting to know Min, but still a little weak. No huge complaints, more just disappointed that they stuck Min in Faldara. It just felt weird. It felt off. Didn't feel right to me. Those are all the real biggest points I have. Also, Fane didn't seem nearly detached and unhinged as he is in the books, and he really needed to, especially with, I mean, unless he's still working with the dark at this point, you know what I mean? Like, because remember, like, it's Shadar Logoth that sort of he severs his connection to the shadow to a certain extent. But if he never had that instance, if he never went into Shadar Logoth, then he'd still be a full-fledged Dark Friend and all that stuff. And that's fine, but then he has no reason to run away with the chest from Faldara. There's no point to it. He'll just take it north. He won't go to Falma to encourage his prey to follow him. Other than revenge, and that's a very poor reasoning for any of the characters. It's a very lazy reasoning. But I think that's all my real complaints. I absolutely love the Logain stuff. Especially when he was trying to be venomous and inflammatory when he knew he was going to be gentled. Like, that was good. I spent like the last 20, 30 minutes just ranting about Wheel of Time. Holy shit. Well, you know what? At least it's invigorating, right? It's promotes me not dwelling on my other misfortunes of life.